Hey guys, welcome in. I'm Zaddy Zeebs, and today we're going to be talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and there will be spoilers. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe and like if you like. And yeah, let's get started. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was written by game developer Guillaume Broek and also Jennifer Svedberg-Yen. Originally, Clair Obscur was set to take place in a steampunk Victorian England with zombies and aliens, but after having a meeting with investors, they thought that they could dream a little bigger, and so that idea was scrapped. And new idea for Clair Obscur, the one that we got, fortunately, came from a painting that Broek really liked and a short story that Svedberg-Yen was writing at the time. What happens in the story is that there is a world called Lumiere, or a town called Lumiere, where every year people are essentially erased from the world at a certain age, and this age is determined by a number on I guess you could call it a statue far off in the distance, and it decreases every year, and the number in the game is 33, hence Expedition 33. Now, a group of citizens of Lumiere get together every year also to set out on a journey to take out the paintress in order to prevent this from happening. As you go on, you come to find out that one of the party members that you're with is actually the paintress, but it was sort of unbeknownst to her, really more forgotten. I would also say that the story is pretty remarkably similar to Final Fantasy X. And you can make the argument for that because in Final Fantasy X, if you haven't played it, one, you should play it, and two, there are groups of people, summoners and guardians, that go out to destroy Sin, who has been destroying humanity for as long as the world of Spira can remember. And the main character who you play as, Titus, or Titus, I say Titus, that's what I thought it was when I was a kid, and Titus just doesn't sound right to me. Sorry. Titus was summoned to the world by essentially the Aeons in order to permanently end the dream. And once they succeed in their mission, Titus is then erased. Now, like I said, it's only similar, it's not the exact same. I would say that there's some pretty heavy similarities, but there's also really big differences. Okay, so for example, the whole world of Lumiere is fake, it's a painting. Final Fantasy X, the world is real, but Titus isn't. In the start of Expedition 33, you start out as Gustav, and Gustav is going to take flowers to his ex, who he has never gotten over, because she's going to get gomashed. And about midway through the story, he dies, and then Verso sort of takes his place. People speculate it's because they couldn't afford Charlie Cox to voice him for that long, but I'm pretty sure that's just how the story was supposed to play out anyways. And I never really got behind Verso as a character that much. I didn't get as attached to him, and it's not because I knew that the guy who plays Daredevil was voicing Gustav. I just liked Gustav more. In an even bigger plot twist, we later come to find out that Maëlle is actually the paintress, which was super unexpected to me. I honestly really enjoyed the twists and turns of the story, just because there were some curveballs that just really threw me for a loop, and I thought that was really cool. Another character that I didn't really care for, but I honestly didn't feel like added anything to the story, was CL. think she was a cool party member for combat, but didn't really add anything to the narrative. Kind of like Kimahri in Final Fantasy X, except I liked Kimahri as a character, but I never used him in combat, which actually helps me out a ton whenever I fought Biran and Yankee in the Mountain God Gazette fight. Moving on to the music, which was super impressive. Just an amazing soundtrack, which was done by Lorian Tester. Lorian Tester developed his love of games because of his dad, who worked in a video game shop when he was a kid, and his dad passed video games on to him. Video games like Wind Waker or Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time were huge inspirations to him, especially from a musical standpoint, because they just stuck with him. And the reason why he fell in love with video game music was because it reminds people of who they were whenever they first heard the songs and the music and played the game. He's even said that video game soundtracks follow you off screen because, you know, in games like obviously Clair Obscur or Hollow Knight or Final Fantasy or Zelda games, songs stick with you for a long time. As his love of video game music continued to grow, he started to compose video game music in his free time, writing music in different styles each week and posting them to SoundCloud. And one day he decided to share one of his pieces to a indie video game forum, and that's how Brock and Svedberg Yen found Tester. There were so many bangers in the game, and some of them are in like boss fights or mini boss fights, if you want to call them that, like Sprong or some chromatic enemies that really just, they're fucking bops, dude. Just incredible. And one thing that's really impressive, I think, about the soundtrack specifically is that there's so much variety. His time spent posting and recording music in different styles really helped to refine his skills. Obviously, it shows in this soundtrack, and it's not the first one he's worked on, but I think it's the first one that he really is known for. Combat is very similar to JRPG, but obviously this game is from a French developer, so maybe we should call it an FRPG. It's turn-based, which is not a very popular or well-loved combat style anymore, which is kind of unfortunate because it's, in my opinion, I think it's still really fun. Final Fantasy X was one of my favorite games. Well, still, it's one of my favorite games for a long time. I loved the turn-based combat. To sort of spice it up a little bit, they added a parry and a dodge mechanic, which I don't think I've seen in a turn-based game before. I feel like dodges only kind of happened like based on your stats. In Clair Expedition 33, you were responsible for if your characters get hit or don't get hit. And it wasn't until much later in my playthrough that I learned that there's an audio cue for perfect dodge timing or perfect parry timing, which was a game changer, and it's how I was able to beat Simon. If you made it through the Simon fight, kudos to you. That was a tough fight. You're also able to rotate out your party members, but you can only do so at a resting point, which I don't really love, because I keep comparing this game to Final Fantasy X, but it really did remind me of Final Fantasy X a lot. So that's why. In Final Fantasy X, you had access to all your party members at all times. You could just push a button and switch them out in combat, and no big deal. However, I didn't use characters like Minoko that much. I also didn't really use Verso that much. My party was the Femme Fatale, if you will. Mael, Lune, and CL. Verso, just for whatever reason, was never one of my strongest characters. Just not a heavy hitter. I didn't care for him as much. Lune was honestly my favorite. Mael was cool too, don't get me wrong. She's a fucking powerhouse. But Lune is my bae. Let's talk about the ending. I went with Mael's ending because I liked her more than Verso, first of all, and I didn't obviously I didn't know what the end was gonna entail, but I still feel like I made the right choice because let's be real, like, we all have that one time in our lives that we wish we could just go and get stuck in and relish the moment a little bit more. That's exactly what Mael's doing. I'm not saying it's a good choice. I don't think it's necessarily right. But I'm saying I understand. Because there was a time, 2018 were some of the best days of my life. They were pure chaos. They were actually not, I was a bit of a wild child, and it was a lot of fun. You know, I had never been more socially active in my life. And I just really enjoyed that, and there are so many times where I would like to go back and do it all again, but I can't, obviously, because I can't paint something on a canvas and go back and just live in it. So I see where Mael's coming from. I'm not, and also she has full use of her facilities, her body, in the painting world. She can talk. And that's why I went with Mael's ending. Overall, I think Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the game. I spent a lot of time doing all the side quests before finishing the game, just so that I could relish the world a little bit longer. Like Mael, I'm super looking forward to what Sandpaw Interactive has in the coming years to see what their next game in the Clair Obscur world will be like. This has been GameFeelz. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what Clair Obscur was like for you and what really made or broke the game for you. I'll see you next time.